Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm Tara Stricker from TSW Life Coaching, and I want to welcome you all here today. I'm grateful that you all decided to come, and my hope for this is that you gain some insight into how you take care of yourself and how maybe you could improve it, I guess. And I want to honor the fact that by even coming here today is an act of self-care. So congratulations on taking that step. I have some slides that we're going to go through, and then we're going to leave some time at the end for questions. So if you have any questions, you can type them in the box and we'll go through those. Yeah, so let's get started. Just going to share my screen here. So we're all here today because we want to talk about self-care. And self-care is something that has been definitely getting a lot more attention. I come from a social work background, and I know that that's something we always heard about. And I know there's a lot of organizations and businesses out there that have self-care as part of their wellness plan, because they've recognized that self-care is vitally important to people's health, mind, body, and soul. And when we talk about self-care, that can hit on all three of those levels, on our mind, body, and souls. The thing is, and I know this from my own experience, a lot of times we put ourselves last, or we don't take time for ourselves. And there's kind of 6 roadblocks that I've noticed that have kind of come up for self-care. So we're going to go through those and talk about ways. I'm going to talk about some tips on how to kind of move past those. So the first thing we're going to talk about is, how do you know that you need some self-care? How do you know it's time to fill your cup? And fill your cup is kind of that, I believe that's a saying that's kind of really popular, is that we can't give from an empty cup. So if we are feeling drained, if we're feeling not well, if we're feeling agitated, things like that, we can't really give to others because we've got nothing left. And so that's why self-care is really important. It fills our cup so that we can give to others and we can be of service to others. So signs that you need to fill your cup is hitting the snooze button too often, feeling overly irritated, that you're living on autopilot. How many of you have ever driven home and not realized how you got there, or made supper and not really realized how you did it? Those are all signs that you're stressed and that there's some time for self-care. Having a negative mindset, so being a pessimist really can be a sign that we need to take some time for self-care. And not feeling motivated in your life, and just kind of that, the draggy kind of feeling. All those are signs that it's time that you need to do something to take care of yourself. And we're going to talk about, like I said, some of those roadblocks on why we tend to get in this state where we feel these ways and we don't take that time. So the first roadblock, and this is probably the most common one, is I have no time. I'm too busy. I have way too much on my plate. And this is what I hear all the time, is that you don't have time for it. How many of you have said any of these to yourself? There's too many things to do, not enough time. I have more important things to do. I don't have time for myself. I'm too busy at home, and my family or my friends or my work needs me. So those are all kind of what we say to ourselves to take away from our doing self-care. And to move past this roadblock is, you need to make yourself a priority. You just need to honor yourself and just make yourself a commitment that you are going to take care of yourself, because again, you can't give from an empty cup. So you need to make sure that you make that decision and decide that you're just going to do that. And how you can do that is by looking, if you're feeling that you're too busy and there's too much on your plate, then it's time to maybe look at delegating things to family members or others. Maybe that means hiring someone, the neighborhood kid, to pull your weeds, or hiring someone to walk your dog, or maybe it's time to start a family chore chart. I know when I was doing family coaching, a lot of parents would say, well, no, I don't get my kids to do chores. But doing a chore chart is a win-win for everybody. So by delegating tasks and taking some things off your own plate, then you can free up some time, some of that valuable time that you have. And setting boundaries, being able to say no when you simply can't or you don't want to do something. There's no shame in setting boundaries. And sometimes the simple act of just saying no is the act of self-care. By saying no to the commitment, by saying no to a friend who's reaching out to you. And I know a lot of people struggle with boundaries, and we're going to talk a little bit about why that is in a minute. So make yourself a priority. Schedule it into your calendar and make yourself that commitment. And that's something that you can do today. So when you're looking at your week ahead, schedule an hour in for yourself and make that commitment, honor that commitment to yourself. So that's how we move past the not enough time. The next one, which is what we call this self-care, you're worth it, is worthiness. We're all so quick to take care of everyone else, and the thought of saying no feels uncomfortable. So setting those boundaries, like I talked about. A lot of us thrive on the fact that others need us. The truth is that underneath this there's some doubts about our worthiness. If we constantly keep putting others before ourselves, then chances are we do not feel worthy unless we are giving to others or being needed by others. This core negative belief is really common and limits a lot of us from giving to ourselves. Too many of us belittle our worth, and this is evident in the lack of self-care. We put ourselves last, behind everyone else, our clients, students, careers, family, friends, etc. We feel that we are being greedy if we dare to take the time for ourselves, when there are so many people who need you. The truth is that you need you. Sorry, I forgot to flip my slide there. And the easiest way, and I tell this to all my clients, is take your own advice. Would you ever find yourself saying to a friend who was having a tough time or was feeling stressed out, would you ever say, suck it up and go make supper? Or don't you dare take time for yourself, your family needs you? Or you're just being selfish, taking time for yourself? Of course not. When we talk to our friends and they're struggling, we say, take some time for yourself, take a break, go for a walk. We give these great advice, but when it comes to ourselves, we don't take that advice. And we just say, oh no, I can suck it up. I need to make supper. Or, oh, I need to help my child with their homework. So just deal with it. And we don't give ourselves that. So if you find yourself giving that advice, take your own advice. We're so quick to dole this advice out because we see our friends as worthy. But when it comes to us, we think we're different. We think that we can handle it, and we think that we're not worthy of it. So until you change this and recognize your worth, then you're putting your wellness at risk. Like this quote says, self-worth comes from one thing, knowing that you are worthy, and you certainly are worthy. So you need to change that limiting belief. You need to be mindful of the internal dialogue, which we're going to talk about next, and you need to affirm that you're worthy. So when you do take that time for yourself, so you're having that bath, make sure that you're honoring that time and you're taking the time honestly and being mindful of what you're saying to yourself and being mindful that you're not sitting in the bathtub going, oh, I should be doing this, I should be doing that. All of that is minimizing your worth, and it's not really self-care at that point. It's more of a self-beat-up session in the tub rather than self-care. Okay, so the next one is internal dialogue. And internal dialogue is a big one. It comes up with pretty much, like I said, with the worthiness, with the I'm too busy. The internal dialogue is the tapes that we play in our head. And it's running through our head constantly. And for most of us, we don't pay attention to them. We just accept what's going through our head as fact, and we don't question them. And we just think it's a part of who we are. So our internal dialogue, or our self-talk, are things like, how dare you take time for yourself? Stop being so selfish. You don't work hard enough to get a break. If you don't do it now, no one will. Others need you. You can't let them down. All of those thoughts that go running through your head that stop you from wanting to take that time or make you feel guilty if you do take time, that's all your internal dialogue. And that's all thoughts that are in your head. It's not truth or it's not fact. It's just the things that we tell ourselves. And again, a lot of times that ties to our belief about worthiness. So we say these things to prove that we're worthy, or we say these things to feel like we have some control, which we're going to talk about next too. The fact is that you need you. And this internal dialogue, if it's affecting you and stopping you from taking that time, then You need to change that dialogue. Sorry, I got lost there for a minute. So be mindful of your self-talk. And a good question to kind of check your self-talk is to ask, would I speak to a loved one this way? Because again, we speak to ourselves in a really negative way. And once you start listening to your self-talk and really tuning into it, you'll probably notice that most of the time it's really quite negative and demoralizing and self-sabotaging too. And so when you tune into that, ask yourself, is this motivating me or not? Because a lot of us don't like to take that time because we feel like if we don't listen to that voice, if we listen to that voice, then we won't be motivated. And our self-talk tries to keep us motivated and tries to keep us in our beliefs. And we believe them to be true. But they're really just the stories of our perceptions, perspectives, fear, and our beliefs. And when we think it's motivating us and keeping us good, and I have that in quotes, good, but in fact it hinders us. So take a minute now and just think of that self-talk and think of the last time that you did something for yourself, self-care wise. What was the self-talk that was running through your head? I'm going to give you a minute to think of that. So if you're thinking back and you can reflect back on that, you'll notice again that most of that was negative. And most of it was guilt-driven, or if you can really tie it back, you can tie it back to that worthiness thing, that others need you, and how can you be so selfish? The thing is, this is only one of the voices in our head, and we need to get a better relationship with that. And how we do that is we change the negative self-talk. So if the voice is telling us that others need us, then you can simply reframe it and say, I need this time. This time is for me. I deserve this time. I'm worthy of this time. And recognize that this is not the voice of motivation. It's not motivating at all to be calling us lazy or to be calling us selfish or any of those other negative messages that you're sending yourself. And I just really love this quote, that what are the most important words in the universe? So the ones we talk to ourselves with. So I think and I tell this to my clients too, I think one of our key things is really being able to tune into that language and tune into those tapes that we're playing. And if they're not helping us and if they're not beneficial to our health and our wellness, which most times they're not because they're negative, then you need to change that tape. And you can change that tape by doing affirmations. You can change that tape by, like I said, just reframing it and saying, no, I deserve this time. Kind of almost having that conversation with yourself. And most times these are the voices of our fears of being judged. So if you can reconcile that, then you can take time for yourself guilt-free. So that's the internal dialogue, which I said is a huge one, and it comes up in all kind of the areas because, again, it's the voice that's running nonstop in our head. And so I put this challenge out to you all to start listening to that voice and really questioning it. Is this truth? Is this being a truthful voice? Is this really how I want to feel about myself too? Or is this something that I want to change? Because they're just thoughts like any other thoughts. So if you're being mindful, then you can change those thoughts and change them to affirmations. So the fourth roadblock is that you are more than your job. So many times people feel, because we spend a lot of our time at work, we feel that our job is us. I mean, look at it in our society. What's the first thing we ask them when we meet them? What do you do? And so that encourages us, our society encourages us to make our careers a priority. And it almost becomes a status symbol to work harder and longer hours. I know you can often hear people saying, well, I work a 16-hour day or I work a 12-hour day. And the thing is, it becomes almost a status symbol and a power symbol. And that's the importance that we've tied to our work and to our careers. And the more we let our careers define us, the more difficult it will feel to choose yourself over your career. The only way past this roadblock is for you to recognize that you are more than your career. You have other roles. Your mothers and fathers, sisters and brothers, friends and community members. If you give everything to your career, you have nothing left for all the other important roles you play. And most times that ends up with us feeling guilty. So we spend a lot of time and energy at work. So when we come home, we're drained and tired, and our family members ask us for something and we feel drained and we feel like we don't want to do it. And then we feel guilty that we're being a bad wife, or we're being a bad husband, or we're being a bad mother, or we're being a bad friend because we don't answer the phone because our friend calls and we know they're going to be on the phone for an hour. So we feel guilty. So a lot of us, because we can gain a lot of self-esteem from our careers, we tend to focus our energy on that. But the thing is, there's all these other roles that you have that are so important and probably important to you as well. But because we tend to feel bad in them because we're feeling guilty and we're feeling like we're not shining our best in them, we tend to focus on our careers rather than the other roles that we play. And the way past this roadblock, again, is just to recognize that you are more than your career. You have all these other important roles, and one of those is yourself too, the relationship that you have with yourself. So it's not just the other roles to other people, but it's that relationship to yourself too. And once you recognize that, then you can work on finding that balance. And again, that would be by setting the priority, by getting your internal dialogue correct, and by knowing that you're worthy of it. And setting boundaries is another great way to find that balance. And I talked about that a little bit before, about being able to say no. So many of us don't like to say no, and we feel uncomfortable with that. And again, that ties to that worthiness, and that ties to that self-talk that says, well, you have to do that. A good friend does that. If you're a bad friend if you don't answer the phone, or you're a bad friend if you don't do this, or you're a bad mom, or you're whatever the self-talk may be. So learning to set boundaries means learning to get a handle on that self-talk and understanding that it's okay to say no. There's no shame in saying no, and it's a wonderful gift that you can give to yourself. All right, on to the next one. So the next roadblock is to release control and perfectionism. Now, this is a huge one and can be kind of an eye-opener for some people. So we're going to talk about control first. A lot of times we take on too many tasks because we feel that we're the only one that can do them. We don't want to give up control. We like the way we do things, and so we want to make sure that it's done our way. So when we think about like delegating a task, a lot of people feel that very stressful because they feel, oh my gosh, they're not going to do it right, or they're not going to do it my way. They're not going to do it the way I like it done. And even that comes with, like, if you think of chores at home or tasks at home, you're like, oh, it's just easier if I do it myself. And so they don't want to give up, people don't want to give up that control. And the only way past this one is that you have to trust others, let others be themselves, and recognize that you're not a superhero. You can't do everything on your own. And what a wonderful gift to give up that control and to trust somebody else to do a task. And yes, it may not go the way you want to. And again, maybe your internal dialogue is going to kick in, or your perfectionism is going to kick in. But that's, again, where you can kind of take those clues and really start listening to yourself and decide if that's how you want to be. So giving up control can seem really scary to some. And I get that, because we like to feel in control. But if you're not having time for self-care, then this is a time where you need to let some of that control go. And again, maybe delegate some of those tasks. The next thing I'm going to talk about is perfectionism. So this one can be a huge kind of eye-opener to some. Perfectionism is something, I mean, I know I really strongly identified with in my career. And I know in interviews I would always say, well, I'm a perfectionist. And I think there's almost a claim to fame in that, or a pride thing in that, which could tie back to the control thing as well. The thing is that there is no perfect. And the thing is, the perfectionism ties back to that worthiness thing. And I have the little chart here. So when we talk about perfectionism, underneath that is there's a need to belong, and there's the fear of rejection. So if you think of when you're doing something, say at work or at home, if you think of the task that you're doing, You want to do it perfect because there's that fear of being rejected or being judged or being criticized. And that's kind of the underlying of the perfectionism, is if you do it perfect, then you'll be okay. If you do it perfect, then no one can say anything. And the thing is, though, is that we set these impossible standards for ourselves, and we never meet our perfectionism. So we set these standards, and then we raise the bar for ourselves all the time. So I want you guys to take a minute to just think back, if you're a self-proclaimed perfectionist, and think back on how this feels when you're trying to do, say, a report, or you're trying to do a chore, or you're trying to do something perfectly. It's a lot of stress, and there's a lot of self-judgment. I know when I feel this coming up, my whole body just feels tense, and I feel anxious, and that self-judgment comes up. And then when we don't meet that impossible mark, there's shame, and then we beat ourselves up about it. I should have done this. I should have said this. I should have done it this way. I should have done this. And on it goes. So there's the shame and the self-judgment in that. So we are creating this all for ourselves. And the way to stop this is to recognize that there is no perfect. I know I like to say to myself, I am perfectly imperfect, and then take a deep breath, because that's really the only thing I can be perfect at, is being imperfect. And ask yourself, are your expectations realistic? Are they something that you can actually do, or are you being overly critical on yourself? And are there ties to that fear of rejection and that needing to belong? Interestingly enough, one of the core fears that we are born with is fear of abandonment and fear of falling. And this needing to belong ties into that fear of abandonment. We are naturally community beings. We need each other. And so this is a really strong core fear for a lot of us, that not belonging and that feeling of rejection. And that's when the perfectionism comes out. Because again, if you have convinced yourself that if you do things perfect and you act perfect and you talk perfect and everything is perfect, then you won't be criticized and you won't be judged. But again, you can't reach that perfection standards. And you'll always fall short, and then there'll always be the self-judgment. So it's a really vicious cycle, because then it just cycles back in like the arrow shows. So you're self-judging yourself and you're shaming yourself. And then you push even harder to try and belong. And it just keeps going and going and going until you drive yourself crazy, pretty much. So really tune into your self-talk and get clarity on this one. And when there is perfection, when that perfectionism voice arises, remind yourself that nothing is ever perfect. And remind yourself that you're perfectly imperfect, and be okay with that. And by prioritizing self-care and delegating some tasks off your plate, you will just need to accept that you can't control everything, and everything won't be done your way. But that's okay. It's not the only way. So I hope that kind of answers some questions about perfectionism. And the last roadblock is asking for support. Most of us won't reach out for support. Our internal dialogue tells us we don't need others. We can handle it on our own. Or maybe it says, no one will understand, or just stop being a wimp and suck it up. Anyway, any of these tapes, coupled with the beliefs around worthiness, make us shy away from getting support. Not to mention, when we ask for help, we are relinquishing control. All of this can make it really difficult to reach out, and a lot of people don't reach out. They struggle with this in their own minds by themselves. And that's the thing, when we don't reach out for help, we're subject to all those internal tapes, and we're subject to the voice of the perfectionist, and we're subject to trying to have control over everything. And that just is a vicious cycle that keeps us stuck and doesn't allow us to grow. So when we don't ask for support, we're just keeping ourselves stuck in the same place, and we have our blinders on because we think everything in our head is truth. Like I said before, we're naturally tribal beings, and we're not meant to do this all on our own. We're meant to support each other, and what a wonderful gift that is when you ask for help. It could be from a friend, or for someone in your tribe, or a professional. It takes strength and courage to reach out. more strength and courage than it takes to do it all on your own and struggle on your own. And life can be stressful. Having someone to help you unburden is the greatest act of self-love you can give to yourself. It truly is a gift of self-love when we ask for help, when we reach out and we realize that we can't do it all on our own. And that reaching out, like I said, could be just delegating a task for family members, or just saying there's a class that I want to take on Wednesday night, so I'm not making supper. Can someone else do that for me? All of that is asking for support. And that in itself, that asking for support, is an act of self-love. All right. That's what we were just talking about. There are people who will support you. It does require you letting your guard down and letting people in and being vulnerable, which is not overly a comfortable thing to do for a lot of people. And that you need to affirm your desire that you deserve happiness. It's that worthiness thing again, that you deserve to be happy and you're worthy of happiness and you deserve time for yourself. And its support is, I think this is something that we believe in our society, that when we reach out for support, we have to be desperate. And we don't. We don't need to be at a point of breaking to ask for help. And most times we shouldn't be at that point. We should be asking for help before we get to the point where we're feeling like I said at the beginning, the signs of when our cup's empty, before we get to the point where we're feeling frustrated, before we get to the point where we're feeling unmotivated and about our day. So now on to a list of some self-care activities. This is a really short list. There's thousands of things you can do. Walks in nature is always good. It kind of is a reset. I know that's fun for me. I walk in nature every morning, and that's my first, I have a morning ritual that's all about self-care. The walks in nature kind of helps ground us, helps us feel centered, and can help us start our days off right or end our days right. Setting boundaries, which we already talked about, saying no when you don't want to or you don't have the time, and being okay with that. Personal growth can be self-care activities. So reading books on personal growth or taking courses on personal growth, or really anything that kind of interests you on your own growth. Maybe it's, there's lots of books out there on the law of attraction or something like that. Starting a hobby. So if there's something that interests you or something that you've always been wondering if you could do, maybe you have an interest in singing, but just feel like you have never had the time. That can be an act of self-care. Joining a class, learning and growing is always an act of self-care. Again, reading, just even taking quiet time, taking time for yourself and just sitting in silence can be a wonderful act of self-care. Maybe that's in the bathtub, maybe it's while you're cooking, whatever it is, but just taking that quiet time. And meditating can also be helpful. And I'd love to hear at the end when we start asking questions, if there's anything else that anyone has as a suggestion. So now what? How to move forward from this is make a commitment to yourself that you are going to make yourself a priority. Make a commitment that you're going to take that time, schedule it into your schedule, and honor it. And always keep that. Just like you would an agreement with anybody else, make that agreement to yourself and keep that time. Recognize that you're worthy and you always have been worthy and you deserve this time for yourself. And any self-talk that's coming up that's telling you otherwise, then change it. Changing your unhealthy habits. So if there's things that you're doing that are not healthy for you, that are helping kind of fuel that self-talk, then it's making those changes, whatever it may be, and honoring yourself. So this one, I think, for me, honoring yourself is doing what feels right in the moment. So if you were needing that time in this moment, then you need to say that. You need to and say and follow through with that. So again, maybe that's telling your family, nope, not doing supper tonight, we're going to order in. Or maybe it's, I'm going to go take a bath because I need this time for myself. And really honoring how you're feeling and allowing yourself that time and allowing yourself that experience. And then again, like I talked about getting support. So reaching out if you need to reach out. And like this quote says, self-care isn't always the chocolate cake or trips to the spa. It could be meal planning, which is a great way, like talking about changing those unhealthy habits. Maybe it's planning to eat better, or going to bed early, or letting go of a friend that's draining to you. And it's always about self-forgiveness. When we talk about that perfectionism, forgiving yourself for meeting your impossible standards and understanding that you are worthy always. So it's not just about the bath. It's not just about the chocolate cake. It's not just about the things that we think about when we think about self-care. It's about really tuning into yourself and being true to yourself and honoring yourself for where you're at. And if you're having a bad day, then honor that and do what you need to do to get yourself in a better frame of mind. So we've talked about a lot today. Like I said, I was going to leave some time. Didn't expect this much time, but I'm going to leave some time for questions. So if you have questions, I would love to answer your questions. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen right now. And then please feel free to ask some questions. Oh, I've seen someone's having some difficulties with Zoom, which is always fun. So does anyone have any questions? What are some things that you have done for self-care, or any ideas that you have for self-care? Any suggestions? I'll give everybody a minute to type. So if you're not familiar with Zoom, down at the bottom, there should be a chat box that you can type in and ask your questions. Is there anything that you felt that I should go through again? Or anything that you are not clear on? An online paint class, that's awesome. Thank you, Anne-Marie. And that's definitely self-care. I hope you're enjoying it. Training at the gym, that's one of mine too. Not one I can do right now, so I'm doing online videos with some of my gym friends. But yeah, that's one that definitely, and again, that's how self-care can tie into the mind, body, spirit thing. If that's something you enjoy and something that you are finding beneficial for you, then that's definitely good for your body and your mind and your overall wellness. Lots of questions. I'm going to make the screen bigger. So I had one, what is it that I do? So my morning ritual, since I started my own business, I go for a walk in nature. Well, I meditate and then go for a walk in nature, and then I do a workout. And so it's quite a long, but it sets my day off perfectly. And it is something that I value, and I will not schedule clients at that time. I will not schedule anything at the time because it's such a priority for me. And it just gets me in the right space for the rest of my day. And yes, you can get on there'll be a recording. I think Michelle will send that email out. Oh, she already answered that one. Some of my favorite self-care routines. I like to challenge myself, so I like to try new things. I am a personal growth and learning junkie, so I listen to a lot of audiobooks. I do a lot of meditating if I'm really feeling off. I've been known to meditate 2-3 times a day. I practice mindfulness is another one that I do for myself. And I do that regularly throughout the day. And I have to admit, I'm a Candy Crush addict. And so I play Candy Crush quite often too as a self-care activity. And we saw yoga. Yoga is definitely a good one. Walking meditation is excellent. Gardening's a really good one, and hopefully we get some nice weather now that you could do that. And time with your horse. Animals are a great way to spend some time with self-care. Oh, and joining Zoom with your church family. That's excellent. And that's that support that I was talking about, because we are naturally tribal beings and we do need each other. So that's good. How do you create an affirmation? That's a great question. So affirmations need to always be in the positive. They need to be in the present tense. And and they need to be relevant and quick and short. So I would say if we're talking about the worthiness belief, like we talked about as being a really common one, the simple affirmation for any of the worthiness talk would be, I am worthy. And saying it in the mirror can be really helpful, and saying it with passion and energy is helpful. So making sure that it's really positive. I hope that answered your question. I find it really hard to do things for myself, and I'm usually too tired. Doing the paint class usually comes after I'm at my wit's end. Okay. So that's kind of that. Well, I'd say the too tired definitely ties into that you're trying to pour from an empty cup. So by making it a priority, and if you enjoy your paint class, that's awesome. I would say then you need to start scheduling it in more regularly and start filling your cup regularly so that you can start feeling not so drained and not so tired, and hopefully that would help. And definitely it's not just meant for when you're at your wit's end. Self-care should be done from a loving space, and not from a, oh my God, I'm going to lose my mind space. A good mindfulness app. I don't know about apps. I believe I just heard Headspace, which I tried a little bit ago. Headspace is, I think they're offering free right now just because of what's going on in our world. So that might be one that you want to check out, Headspace. I think there's one called Calm. I think Michelle might know some good ones too. I am enough is a great affirmation. Sorry, go ahead, Michelle.
No, that's okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Michelle with Nutters, and I'm a bit of a tech geek, so I like the apps. There's actually there's a gratitude app, and I'm actually trying to look for it right now. I think it's just called Grateful. And I've had real good success with this, as I list 5 things that I'm grateful for every day. And the nice thing about this app is it has a timer or a reminder. So you can set a timer to say, okay, at 9 o'clock every day, I want to list 5 things that I'm grateful for. Headspace is another good one. I've used that as well. There's also a whole host of great meditations on YouTube. So, some great resources there if you want to check them out. What I will do is I will do some research for you guys to find some apps, and I'll include it with the recording when I send it out. Back to you, Tara.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm going to turn my video off because I'm answering the questions and I'm not. So someone says they don't see all the comments. They are down in the question and answer area on the bottom of your screen, depending on what you're using. So hopefully that helped you. My favorite self-growth book. Oh my goodness. So I love The Alchemist. And the voice they use on The Alchemist on Audible is amazing. I could listen to his voice forever. I love Brene Brown's stuff, and when she does it on Audible, she does it with her own, and she's quite spunky and funny and great. So I would recommend any of her stuff is really great. Tara Brach is also really good. She's a Buddhist psychologist, and she's got lots of great stuff out there too. So those would kind of be my suggestions. I don't know, anybody else in the group have any suggestions? Oh, we have some app ones. Calm and Insight, and the timers are good apps for meditation. Excellent. I'm studying and finding it hard to stay motivated to study. I would say my suggestion for that would be then to do a self-care before, or to take time for yourself and do something that you enjoy, something that energizes you, and then try and study, because studying can definitely be draining for sure. Some great questions in there. We had one comment that was only asking for help once, and once you've reached a breaking point, but giving us permission to ask for help before that point. Definitely. I think that's a cultural thing. I think in our culture, we're kind of taught that we don't ask for help, or we don't reach out until things are really bad, till we can't take it anymore. And that's the shame, because you don't need to get to that point by any means. There's lots of supports out there. Unfortunately, fortunately the clients that I have, but unfortunately, a lot of them do come to me when they are at that breaking point. I work with a lot of people who have been through death, divorce, had their life majorly shooken up by something. I call them the 5Ds. And they're kind of at that point of rebuilding. But I think it would be amazing if we all realized when we're getting close to the end of our rope, and we reach out before we get to that point, before we get to the point where we just are at the end of our rope. So I think that's a great suggestion, and I think it's something we could all take as advice. Great advice. Oh, we have a love podcast. Oprah and Eckhart Tolle. Yeah, they're great too. And he's got stuff on YouTube now, I've noticed too. Some other apps are Headspace, Calm, Grateful, and Relax Melodies. And the Simple Habit app, I'm not familiar with that one. And I believe, yes, Jocelyn, they're going to send those suggestions in your email. So is there any other questions? What are the things that you kind of struggle with when you think of taking self-care? Anyone want to share? Does that internal dialogue come up for a lot of you? Time, yeah. Perfectionism, yep. Thank you for all those who are commenting. So the time one, like I said, the best way to deal with that one is just make it a priority. And if you make the commitment to yourself like we do for other people, we're so good at committing to other people. We need to make it a commitment to ourselves and just honor that. My job is my worth, definitely. That is so common. And again, it's a cultural thing. We identify with our jobs, and we identify that that's where our worth is coming from. So my suggestion there would be to find other ways, because you're worthy no matter what. And if you lost your job tomorrow, which hopefully you don't, you would still be worthy. It's not about your job. So find other things that you can start getting those good feelings from, so that it's not all reliant on your job. Motivation, yeah. Is that kind of the time thing, I think, maybe, Rhonda? Is that the motivation, or just not wanting to? Letting my team down. Oh, definitely letting other people down. And you're welcome. A good meditation for someone that's lost their loved ones. It's just a phone number on that one. I'm going to say there's a lot, depending on what you spiritually believe. So maybe if you want to reach out to me in email, then I can send you some, and we can kind of have a chat about that, because I don't know how many have visited my website, but that's actually how I started on this path, and I lost my husband. So there's some suggestions that I could definitely have on that, but it depends on where you are spiritually. Stopping the negative internal dialogue is definitely, and job worth. Those tie together so much. And it's I don't recommend doing it, but I did it with some coaching friends. If you're not familiar with how negative your dialogue can be, try saying it out loud a couple times. Just the thoughts that are running through your head, the awareness of having that. We are nastier to ourselves than we would ever be to someone else. And the funny thing is that we recognize that the nastiness and negativity doesn't motivate others, but yet we think for us it would be motivating. We think that by, beating ourselves up, that will motivate us to not make mistakes. And again, I think that ties to that where we talked about with perfectionism, that ties to that not wanting to be rejected, because we feel if we beat ourselves up enough and we say enough nasty things, then no one else can catch us off guard and really kind of hurt us. So changing those tapes is a huge act of self-care, because those are definitely draining and negative. struggle with actually doing it. Yeah. And not taking the time to enjoy it or acknowledge it. And I don't think I touched on that enough. A lot of people, and I did this when I was doing social work too, I would take the time, but I would kind of be the whole time like, oh, okay, I did my self-care, I'm done. And so it wasn't really enjoyable, and it wasn't something that I wanted to make happen because it wasn't enjoyable. And because I would beat myself up with that self-talk, and my worthiness thing would kick in then for sure too. So definitely making it the priority and honoring yourself and honoring the fact that that is your time and it's important, I guess, is kind of the only way, and that you deserve it and you're worthy of it. If we spoke to ourselves the way we spoke to others, or we spoke to others the way we spoke to ourselves, we wouldn't have any friends. Definitely not. And kind and patience is definitely important, especially with ourselves. And you're welcome for all the information. Oh, thank you, Nutters, for my website. There's a free app someone's talking about. Gupta, I'm not sure, I'm not familiar with that one. There is so many great meditations on YouTube. I have hundreds that I listen to on YouTube. And so there's lots of great ones. And you'll find somebody that you really resonate with. And YouTube does like Facebook does. If you like somebody, they'll also say, oh, people who like this person also like. So you'll find lots you can find that way. Some good ones that I listen to are Jason Stephenson. Stephen Nobel is another one, or Steve Noble. Kenneth Soares, who I absolutely love his voice. And he also does the Powerful Mind Meditation Club, I think it's called. Those are kind of my favorites. You're welcome. And you're welcome. Thank you. You expect things of yourself that you would never expect anyone else to do? Definitely. And again, that ties to that perfectionism and that fear of rejection and a little bit of control too. So we have these high expectations of ourselves, unrealistic expectations, and they're not fair on us, and they're quite mean. And when we don't meet up to them, then that internal dialogue kicks in, and it just becomes this vicious cycle, because then you go, well, next time I'm going to do it perfect. And next time I'm going to be able to push myself so that I won't feel this way. But we just keep setting ourselves up for failure every time. The definition of self-sabotage. And I believe the definition of crazy making. And you're welcome very much. Thank you guys for being here. If I'm not helping others, oh, the nurturer. I can so relate to that one. Something I do with coaching is we talk about archetypes, and the nurturer or the hero is all about helping others. And when we find our worthiness, or we attach our worthiness to that, then we definitely feel worthless when we are not doing for others, which makes it really hard to take that time for self-care. But again, that's just a mindset change, and it's about recognizing that you have worth and you have value, and you can't take care of others if you are drained and your cup's empty. So recognizing that you need to fill your cup, and if you have to at first to try and convince yourself that it's okay, then you can kind of trick yourself into saying, I can't help others, or I can't do good for others. I can't be of service if I'm not of service to myself. Any other questions? We're kind of running low. Thank you for all the questions. I'm way better at answering questions than I am at doing a talk, I think. So, which is my negative self-talk coming out. You're very welcome. I hope it was helpful. You can find more information on my website, which I think Michelle put up there, is tswlifecoaching.com. And you can find me on social media. You can also sign up on my website for, I send out emails a couple times a week with just some helpful, motivating, inspirational things. If it resonates with you, then I'd love to have you on my list. And like I said, you can always follow me on Facebook and Instagram. And I have a YouTube channel, and I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter as well, all under TSW Life Coaching. And hopefully that will help you. I'm inspired. Awesome. I'm glad to hear it. So again, thank you all for giving me your time and honoring yourself this way and choosing to be on a workshop that's all about self-care, because like I said, that is an act of self-care right there. And so I hope it was helpful, and I hope you guys, I hope you guys take some time for self-care. Make a commitment to yourself tonight. Here's your challenge for all of you. Make a commitment to yourself tonight that you are going to set an hour aside next week for self-care, and honor that, because you do deserve it and you are worthy. And thanks so much.
Thanks, Tara. Are we doing the draw as well for your coaching session?
Yes. Oh, sorry, I just saw some other questions. A lot of this comes to belief work. How do we work on understanding those? Oh, beliefs. Oh, beliefs are fun. So the best way, and well, not the best way, but one of the ways to understand your beliefs is listening to yourself talk and writing it down. And you'll start to see common themes coming up. So like the worthiness one, you may hear things like you don't deserve it, or you're not worthy of it. Who do you think you are to want more? That kind of thing. You'll start to notice that there's common themes coming up. And so that's how you can kind of get to what some of your beliefs are. And definitely, Nicole, you can reach out to me. I have some other suggestions too. And I do some energy work with beliefs too. So that might be helpful. Another question, I'm not used to dealing with anger. It's not an emotion I'm familiar with. Oh, I hear ya, Jasper. Feeling impatient and angry lately. Any tools on coping with frustration or anger? Anger is not one that I like feeling. I don't think anyone does. Anger is usually, anger is a secondary emotion is what it's called. So it's underlying something else. So how to deal with your anger is, first of all, allow it, and do what you need to do to let it out, whether that be scream, yell, or maybe it's just even feeling it in your body and letting it pass, because it's not helpful to keep it stuffed. And then kind of ask yourself, what's underneath this? What's going on? And see if you can figure it out. A lot of times underneath anger are things like disrespected, guilty, shame, kind of all those really icky emotions that we don't like to feel. And why the anger comes out is because anger, we feel powerful, but when we feel in shame, or we feel disrespected, or we feel guilty, we feel powerless. So we like to, the anger kind of comes bubbling up because it makes us feel more in control of it. So hopefully that was helpful, Jasper. If not, you can definitely reach out. I did write a blog about anger and what's underneath anger, and you can find that on my webpage. My favorite self-development book. I have so many. It depends, I guess, kind of where I am in my journey on what kind of books, but I do love The Alchemist. There's just so much depth in that book and so inspirational. So that's one of my faves. I have 3 kids, and I find my day goes by and then I haven't accomplished much of anything, but I have had great intentions and end up disappointed because I haven't done what I wanted to do. That's setting those impossible standards. You have 3 kids, and that's huge in itself. So recognizing that, and stop setting yourself impossible standards, really, and start really looking at what is possible for you, and then being flexible and being caring with yourself with that. So if you don't reach them, it's not that you're a failure. It's not that you've done bad. It's just that, okay, I didn't have time for that, and being okay with that answer. An ex-husband who is verbally abusive and I don't know how to move on. I'm mad at myself for letting the person abuse me so severely. That would be that kind of guilt stuff. Lots and lots and lots of self-love and self-forgiveness is kind of my suggestion for that. we all make mistakes. And I guess one of my favorite things to say is you're doing the best you can at every given moment. So give yourself that credit and forgive yourself. And I'm sure there's lots you learn from it too. So hopefully that was helpful. Sorry, Michelle, I cut you off.
That's okay. I think, is that all the questions everybody had, or do you have any more comments, questions that you want to ask Tara before we do a draw for a free coaching session? How exciting.
I think that's it.
Okay. Tara, do you want to pick a number between,
Hello?
Oh, sorry, there was another comment that popped up.
Oh.
Do you want to pick a number between 1 and 42?
37.
37. Rhonda Wilson, you are the lucky winner. Yay!
Yay! So, Rhonda, you can just reach out to me and we will set something up. You're very welcome for presenting. I hope it was helpful. And like I said, please reach out if you have any questions, or if you didn't feel comfortable writing them, or if you're looking for some direction, or like I said, you can follow me on social media. Thank you so much for having me. That was great. I loved all your questions. And yes, congratulations, Rhonda. You can reach out to through my email, which I believe Michelle will include in an email.
I will. I'll include a list of the apps we talked about and some of the other apps, a link to your website, as well as your email address.
Perfect. Thank you so much, everyone.